seems fair to me.
Yes, he did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Wow, a lot of changes and movements going on this week in St. Louis, and we're going to talk about them on this edition of Donnybrook. Thanks for joining us. Let's meet the panelists. We welcome Wendy Wiese back. She took a week off. Of course, she's 50% of Jennifer and Wendy on KTRS. Mr. Bill McClellan, he's back from his vacation. He's with STLtoday.com and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Ray Hartmann, he's here every week, and we appreciate that. He's also with the RFT, rawstory.com, and KTRS. And Mr. Rock Chalk Jayhawk himself, Alvin Reid, rooting for KU this weekend when he's
hard, rooting hard, right?
When he is not editing, of course, at the St. Louis American and writing a sports column there. We'll get into that and more.
But Wendy, beside the Jayhawks, yes.
Yeah, there was a story that we have a feeling is going to be buried tonight, and we will not allow it to be buried. Our colleague here and friend has announced that he is retiring. That is the bad news, but the good news is he is going to stay right here at 9PBS, and we are so thrilled for him. And we're going to make Donnie Bash. I mean, obviously it's going to be Donnie Bash, but it's also going to be a retirement party for Charlie. And you and Beth and the kids have had such a wonderful life to this point, and we know, we know that the best is yet to come. We're very, very happy for you.
Thank
Charlie.
you so much. Although when you said you were thrilled, I thought you were like making a hostage video there.
No.
Thank you very much. No, thank you. Retiring from the radio side, but for better or worse, I'll still be here at 7 o'clock on Thursday night.
Yep.
And I want to start with you with a big announcement that Trudy Busch Valentine, who is the daughter of the late Gussie Busch, iconic brewer, right, has decided to run for U.S. Senate. I don't think she's ever thrown her hat in a political ring before, but she's been involved in many local causes. I've seen that. And she's going to run for U.S. Senate in Missouri as a Democrat, so she'll be up against Lucas Kunce, who immediately said, hey, she's just another billionaire heiress who's been ripping cities apart for parts. But then today she apologized for being the veiled prophet queen in what, 1977?
1977.
1977. Do you think that it was appropriate for her to apologize?
Well, if our text line at KTRS was any indication, a lot of people were saying that they were very disappointed that she felt the need to apologize, that it was 1977, that the world was a different place, and that she had just lost their vote. I'm sure that there are a lot of other people who will feel that she did the right thing preemptively, politically, but just going off of our text line, there were plenty of people who just thought, enough already. We can't retroactively apologize for every move that we made.
No, I'm just going to say, I graduated in 1978, making me 61, okay? And if you were involved really in my lifetime, but especially at a time when at that time I was 17, 18 years old, yeah, you should probably apologize, because there is no kind of halfway on that whole veiled prophet thing, okay? And I'm not saying that people jump to the conclusion that you're like, well, you're saying that racist intent and they were racist and all that, and I know it's a debutante ball and all that, but if you were involved in it, you should apologize. I'm sorry, I was really off in all that, because that was really bad, and it had bad intention back in the day, because I was there. Okay, and it just, I feel like apologizing because I went and saw it one time, but the only reason our family went was because my father wanted us to see it. And I saw it, and I, you know, even at like 14, I'm like, what the is this?
Well, I agree with the sentiment, but I disagree politically, okay? In other words, I think, and I certainly don't, those people who are offended that she apologized, I'm not one of them. My problem is she's running for Senate in Missouri. And most people in Missouri haven't heard of, a lot of them haven't heard of Gussie Busch. And by the way, if anybody should apologize, it would have been Gussie Busch. He was her dad. They're the ones that you know, she's a 20-year-old kid. But my point is this, that the last thing you need as a candidate for U.S. Senate in Missouri is for your first headline to be the Democrat who apologizes to blacks and stuff. It is so stereotypical. Lucas Kunce is writing a playbook, in my opinion. Whether he can win or not, I don't know. But he is running, speaking American to people, speaking just common.
Speaking baloney.
That may be.
Because she's not a billionaire heiress who is ripping the city apart.
Look, of course. My point is, Lucas Kunce, yes, it was. Lucas Kunce has one message, and he sticks to it the way.
Let's talk about Trudy Busch Valentine.
Do you think she should have apologized?
No, I said no. I absolutely shouldn't have apologized. I think but it's mainly because it's such bad politics.
Well, I don't think it's bad politics. I think it's a smart thing for her to apologize. And do I think she had to? No. When I was 18 and 19 and 20, I did a lot of things worse than being a VP person. But, you know, you have something like that in a Democratic primary. The smart thing to do is get rid of it right away. Say, you know, hey, looking back on it, it was wrong to participate in it, but I wasn't thinking
don't forget.
and get it over with.
But it was a private party. Okay?
Yeah.
Debutante balls are for the rich.
Correct.
And, you know,
and always have been.
I've never been invited to one either.
Right.
But I'm saying this: it is. If the rich can't have parties, what are they?
Well, what Alvin's saying is right, though. It has a history.
No history. Let me tell you something. This might be a shock to those on the panel and maybe our viewing audience. I picked up the Ladue News this year. It comes to the house, and I looked at all the photos of the debutantes this year, and they were all white.
Well, that's
now, if I could be wrong, because, you know, sometimes you can't quite tell, but I don't think this is history. I think this is modern day.
Charlie,
and whatever it is.
It is history. The VP organization had roots going
but I'm talking about now. It hasn't changed.
Saying, but as Alvin pointed out, in 1977, she stood next to a guy who looked like a Klansman. They had roots going back a century, literally, to being upset about the railroad workers striking and stuff. They were totally a racist organization. But here's my point. And to Bill's point, this is you've got to understand, this is a statewide race, and they're treating it like the St. Louis race. The large majority of people...
She's just getting out in front of it, Ray.
But she didn't need to. I read my column in the RFT because I said what I thought she
Ray writes about it next week.
I did.
Kunce, with his jab at Trudy Busch Valentine, played right into her hands and the point that she's trying to make about a kinder, gentler Democratic Party.
That's not what you need in Missouri.
But you know what she did, though, Wendy? She buried his remark, and she shouldn't have, because just like when he said that Jeff Bezos had blood in his hands because of the tornado, the guy's a flamethrower. He's not responsible.
He's a flamethrower, but that's what the Democrats need if they want to win.
I'm sorry, please.
All right. Seems to me that if a moderate Republican stepped forth and said, like, you know, all this falderall about ain't no COVID and all this racist stuff we got going on every day in our party, I'm not standing with it. By your definition, you're like, what a bad political move. Because how are you going to win as a Republican if you're, like, taking that stand?
It's true.
We would applaud that candidate as a Republican, but you're saying as a Democrat she's making...
Well put. Let's move on to the second topic. Ray, we're going to give it to you. Jane Duker, who is a lobbyist, an attorney for the police union, two of them, I think, and former chief of staff for Governor Bob Holden. As a matter of fact, the first woman to be general counsel to a governor, has decided to throw her hat in the ring, taking on Sam Page in the Democratic primary for St. Louis County Executive. Handicap this one for us, will you?
I think it's unknown. I think she should decertify herself as a lobbyist personally, because I think that's a conflict. She's got to make that call, and I don't think she can even raise money if she's a lobbyist. So I don't understand that part. She was on our show Monday night. She made an interesting point, which I had kind of not thought about, which is one of her appeals, obviously it's mostly anti-Sam Page, is she's had a lot of administrative experience, which is not something you think about. I certainly disagree with her positions on police, which she's represented them, but I will say that what she has to say about crime in the county and Sam Page's mishandling of police matters and generally Prop P, diverting the money and stuff, she has got a very legitimate appeal, and I would not underestimate her. I think we have to wait and see how the campaign goes.
I thought that Richard Callow of the Political Eye is that the name of his?
It was we ran it in our political line.
Okay.
But
Well,
it was just a statement.
was a great quote, and maybe not completely accurate, Charlie, but that I didn't see Steve Stenger's former campaign manager running for county executive. It wasn't on my bingo card.
Yeah.
I thought that was very clever, even though she wasn't campaign manager.
He is a clever guy, but she was an unpaid volunteer for
she
Steve
worked for
Stenger, not the
Stenger.
campaign manager. And so that's the rhetoric isn't accurate, but
thought it was really interesting when she is applying the pressure right out of the gate, telling Sam Page, challenging him to a debate. I think this is going to be a lot of fun to watch because she is the anti-Sam Page. He is the anti-Jane Duker. You could not ask for more polar opposites.
Yeah, we talked about the St. Charles race. I think the outcome is the same. My understanding is that there were also people that were asked to run, and nobody wanted to run. Now, I'm not saying that she was bottom of the barrel, but I'm just saying she wasn't at the top. So, compromise candidate or find anybody candidate, I still think she loses.
Well, that may be true. If she can't raise money, it could be a real challenge. But don't you think that she's tireless? I mean, you may not agree with her, but she never stops. I don't think she sleeps.
No.
And he is so laid back, and he's already admitted that he doesn't spend all of his time on the job.
Yeah,
I think he's going to have
But laid back wins. He can very easily win.
Who was the political strategist who was quoted in the paper? Anita Mannion. She said he's got a target on his back between these two April referendum with the second job, you know, whether people in the county want their county executive to have an illegal second job and whether they should pay for their assistants out of their pockets. I mean, he is a very unpopular person.
And to say he's flawed as county executive, I think is a dramatic understatement myself. But the point is, this having the side hustle as an anesthesiologist, after one of his points when he ran was he was making this big financial sacrifice to run, and he wasn't going to do this.
Totally transparent.
And he was going to be all this, soothe the pain for the county. I got to tell you something. That's one of her main points, and it'll be interesting to see how the vote goes next week. There's sort of a referendum on whether you punish somebody to do that. I think he's got a problem.
I think all the good government people who are down on Sam Page, if Jane Duker runs and she can't raise money herself because she's a lobbyist, so it'll all be sort of sideways money. You can get money from here, and you can. It won't have a good look to it at all.
Oh, I'm not one of the good government people.
It is true. Next week, St. Louis County voters will decide whether they want the county executive to vote his or her full-time to the job. Of course, everyone, Alvin, on this panel has a side hustle.
I was just going to say, pretty much everybody in St. Louis.
Everybody in
St. Louis County.
We've plowed that before. Alvin, Tim Fitch, former St. Louis County Police Chief, has announced that he's not running for re-election. And I think he actually did something quite remarkable on the county council because he, along with Mark Harder, two Republicans, were able to forge a coalition with two Democrats, and you don't see that every day. So if nothing else, I think that the county council is going to change quite a bit next year with his absence if he's not replaced by a Republican like Dennis Hancock. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. I think that the alignment was for reasons maybe, quite frankly, what I don't think were good politics as far as the black community was concerned, but more power to him. It's politics. I'm disappointed that he's leaving the fray. Now, it's easy for me to say you should have just moved. Okay, they moved the boundary on you. You know, you had been living there a short period of time anyway. Just move. That's easy for me to say. But, I mean, okay, so you stirred it up and you had a majority and we are where we are and then they said, like, all right, I'm done with it. And that leaves me kind of uneasy.
Of course, I'm biased because I think he's been a good counsel. I mean, I may disagree. In fact, I do disagree with him on kind of the partisan issues, but I think he's a good example of why there should be nonpartisan government. I think he's been a really good member of the county council.
You wouldn't know he was a Republican.
Well, no.
And you wouldn't know that these other folks were Democrats.
I didn't say I wouldn't know.
Well, what difference does it make whether you got an R or a D?
Well, I'm saying he's a good example of why we should have nonpartisan county government. Is all I'm saying. And I think he was a good police chief and a good council person. And I say that because I didn't agree with him on masks and a lot of other stuff, but he is somebody that can work across the aisle. And and I think he's going to be missed. I don't think he had any obligation to run. I'm guessing he'll come back in some form,
of course he will.
In county government, or in some form of government. But
okay,
I think he'd be missed.
Bill, what do you think about Steve Roberts, Senator Steve Roberts, who has thrown his hat in there? There's a lot of hats being thrown around this week.
Yeah.
He's going to take on Cori Bush in the 1st Congressional District, and you know, she has her followers. There's no doubt about that. Can he win?
Well, it's going to be very uphill. And you know, I'm friends with Senator Roberts' mom and dad, Steve and Eva. So, you know, I have a bias in this, and I think that Cori Bush has made a lot of mistakes. You know, I think not supporting President Biden with the bill back together, and I think the defund the police stuff. You know, I'm not a big Cori Bush fan, but I think that the progressive movement in the 1st District is very strong, and I think that the young people that came out of Ferguson are a strong political force, and I think that young Steve Roberts has a uphill climb.
Now, I've become a fan. I was like, when it all went down, before I was, you know, like back in the workaday world and whatnot, at the American, you know, like, she won. I don't know how. We've had this discussion where, like, she lost the first time, got beaten the second time. I thought she'd get beat but come closer, and she won. It surprised me. Okay, which meant something changed. But also, since I've been there, let me tell you what. I have to kind of like filter how much Cori Bush goes into the paper because she's doing a lot. We get a lot of releases about how much money is coming here. This project, that project. And I mean throughout the entire region, not just the city of St. Louis. And she will be able to campaign on the fact that I'm bringing it home. Now, I might say defund the police, and you see that on Fox News, but Fox News is not covering what organization got this and what organization got that. And it's a lot of money. And it immediately started, and it keeps coming. And so she's active. She's doing things.
So
She voted
his
against
argument,
the money.
Wait.
but his argument about the Pentagon and the NGA and defund the Pentagon, that's not going to land with anybody?
No, not really. No, I don't think so. Not enough that he would win an election.
You know what? I hate to tell you, Alvin, I think I agree with you in the sense that love her or hate her, that woman works very hard, and she is all over the place. Now, I think she's got a problem because she voted against sanctions against Russia. She voted against the infrastructure bill. She wants to defund the police. She votes against weapon systems that are in her district.
But the only people who love her are the people in her district.
Who vote for her.
No.
No, but that's not.
She has people coming in from out of town who support her.
Right. I thought the language of each of them was so interesting because Steve Roberts is talking about serving the people. She talks about loving the people. And believe it or not, that means a lot. That means a lot to some people, yeah.
I don't really know what to think. One part of this that I don't know yet is how much redistricting affected that district. It did somewhat, but I don't think anybody, well, first of all, I guess it's not even done, right, technically. Right. And I think that's a factor that could come into play. You know, and I agree with Alvin that I think she has been, you know, she is, while she is to the left of the average person in her district, well, she is, but yeah. I've never really felt, I've always thought her passion is much more authentic than that of so many others.
But I'll tell you something.
And I don't think it's going to be an ugly campaign because of some personal stuff.
Really ugly.
And I'm kind of torn because I like Steve Roberts, I do. But it's going to get ugly. I think we got to wait to see what the district ends up looking like. But she is an incumbent. She's a nationally known figure who will get a ton of money for that.
Yeah, but
and I think it is an uphill battle.
On that in terms of her celebrity status and how she tweets, you know, constantly.
I got to tell you something, though.
It's uphill.
I think the woke movement is dead. I've seen like 5 stories in the last week that convinced me that being woke and progressive is over. Well, let me say really quickly. MIT is bringing back the SAT. In Chicago, Mayor Lightfoot is bringing back the Columbus statue, which was taken out of Grant Park. In Albany, New York, not a red state, they are reversing bail reform, okay? And then in New York City, the new mayor there, Eric Adams, is getting rid of 150 homeless encampments, and he's giving a voucher for their goods, you know, whatever property they have, 24-hour notice. Not like St. Louis, where Christine Gracia wants 30-day notice. MIT got rid of the SAT. They're bringing it back after 2 years. I think the woke movement is dead.
Well, woke is like defunding police. It's just like a poorly termed thing that conservatives put on something. It was never really anything anyway.
But Cori Bush is one of the only members of Congress who continues to use that term. And I understand. Like I say, I think she's still the heavy favorite to win because of the just the fact she's an incumbent. I mean, that's the odds-on favorite normally. But I think much like these other races, I think it will be an interesting race.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody. I think one of the things we learned from Cori Bush's race is don't sleep on somebody. Because I thought that the first race that Cori Bush ran, I was the one saying I thought she had a chance against Lacey Clay, and I was wrong. She got crushed. And then the second time, I thought Lacey's got a safe race. I was wrong.
Right.
She beat him. So don't ask me to pick.
If anybody's going to beat Cori Bush, it's going to be now. I mean, because I think that, like most incumbents, she'll get stronger and stronger and get a better organization. But I think she goes into this as a heavy favorite. Yeah.
Alvin Reid, I want to ask you about in the land of Lincoln, Casino Queen is opening up its sports book. And I had to actually look up that term. I'm new to the game. That means a room or a place where they allow gambling, betting on sports. So a sports book will open at the Casino Queen. Meanwhile, in Jefferson City, apparently the owners of the Blues and the Royals and the Cardinals are very happy that their legislation, which would legalize sports betting in this state, including at sports venues, is progressing smoothly. Don't you, at the end of the day, just feel that this is going to end up taking money from the poor and giving it to the rich, and that's money that the poor often can't afford to lose?
Well, I will be saving on gas money from driving over to the Casino Queen. No, all right, and they did have a sports book. They had and it was a nice kind of big room, but the place that's opened up now, you can order food and hang out and watch 1,000 TVs and whatnot. Look, revenue is revenue, and J.B. Pritzker is running commercials now because he's running for re-election, and he's talking about the Rockford Airport expansion. He's talking about this project, but he's also talking about all this money that's coming in from the sports book. And he leaves out the marijuana part, but that state is, while still obviously in debt, is bringing in a lot of money and is helping the problem, and he's very popular. Missouri needs to do it regardless of what you think about it. A, we need the money. B, people want to do it. Let's just do it.
If all of your friends jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge,
okay.
you jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, Alvin. That's what your mother was saying.
No, she's right there. Well, Alvin was the first one to jump off, and he found out the water was not that deep.
He jumped in a pile of money.
The question you should be asking is, what are the odds that Alvin would jump off the Brooklyn Bridge? Who wants to get in on the action?
The thing that scares me about this betting on baseball at the game is supposedly you're not just betting on the game, but you can bet on who's going to get the next hit. And how do you keep the sport looking pure if you know that this guy who's hitting, if he makes an out, some people are going to make a lot of money.
Well, we were in Hot Springs for our annual trip, and it is now the racetrack and casino, and the sports betting area is already very, very popular, and you could barely find a place in the parking lot for all the buses.
Why have you, Wendy?
And Wendy, let me just say, I was in Hot Springs at the same time you were, but I was not at the racetrack. I was taking the waters.
Taking the waters.
I know in baseball, you always are you have this Cubs thing going on. But I think the 1990s are wanting your argument against gambling back because that horse.
I like the 90s, Ray. I don't take that as an insult.
No, I know you don't. We're both 20th century men. But the point is, that horse, which you can bet on now, is out of those horses that are out of the barn. Yeah. You can bet on them. But it's like being upset about intercollegiate athletics being overrun by money. It's real. As Alvin points out, it is a big revenue generator.
Let's move to the last topic. Wendy, cell phone use in automobiles. I think Missouri is the only state that doesn't outlaw it for people over the age of 21. Maybe it's one of 2 states, along with Montana. Do you think that this measure in Jefferson City to ban cell phone use in cars is going to pass, and should it?
I've never understood the over 21 part because if I'm dead, it doesn't matter if the driver is over 21 or under 21. I do think cell phones should be illegal.
I agree with Wendy, and I have to tell you, I mean, will it solve all the problems? Of course not. But the idea of hands-free driving, and I'm not, you know, I want to tell you, I don't think it's even, I mean, it's one of those things that, why do we got to be like the 50th state to do that? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I just felt like the leading cause of accidents, I think, still proves out is beverage and food consumption. And if you're not going to outlaw that, how are you going to tell somebody that they can't speak on themselves?
That was John Britton's argument when he was the lobbyist for the brewery. He
In the
said,
90s.
if you are not going to outlaw peanut butter sandwiches in the car, you can't outlaw beer.
Well,
and the legislator said, you make a great point.
We have less than a minute to go, but I mean, right now, we know police officers aren't really enforcing expired tags and lack of insurance and, you know, all these cars that are driving 90 miles an hour. Do you really think that the police are going to start enforcing cell phone use in an automobile?
The issue is whether you know,
accident.
instead of making the perfect the enemy of the good, the issue is up or down, binary choice. Do you think people ought to be able to be on their cell phone in only Missouri out of all 50 states or not? And I think the answer is not.
Okay. Ray, you're going to have the last word on this edition of Donnybrook. Let's see what the folks had to say about last week's program. A.J. Willikers tweeted, seeing the back-to-back tweets about, 1, people not moving to St. Louis, and 2, the very real possibility that Missouri will elect Eric Greitens, that sort of answers it all, don't it? And then there was this response to that. Kyrock31, I think it has more to do with the dysfunctional local government and rampant crime. You can write us, care of 9 PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget to tweet. To email Donnybrook at 9pbs.org and then tweet at hashtag DonnybrookSTL and find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. That's it for this edition, but stay tuned because just around the corner, Joel Schwartz, local attorney, will talk about his new book, Bone Deep, with Bill McClellan and Ray Hartmann. That's on next up, so don't go away.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.